Steven, let's just kick it off from the top with this Gran Turismo update. Let's see here. So Kazunori Yamauchi, president of
Polyphony.
Polyphony Digital, creator of Gran Turismo, put out a statement on the PlayStation blog, apologizing for the debacle that was the most recent update and like the 24 to 48 hour outage of Gran Turismo 7, where you could only play maybe 1% of the actual game. Some compensation.
In my case, 0%.
Yeah, it was a fucking nightmare. Any hooser, there's a statement out there essentially apologizing, saying, "Hey, we messed up. There's some free money involved. There's some reworkings of how things are done. A bit more, some explanation as to why they did some things. I'll let you kind of run the ball with this one because I don't play Gran Turismo. So let me just take it from the top.
I'm really glad that this statement was made, because if you remember our previous episode, I had some qualms with the statement that was made, basically saying, this is not a direct quote, but it was basically saying, "Calm your shit and wait," is what he said to their fans, which I thought was pretty shitty. And I specifically mentioned that they should do some kind of a thing, like some in-game credits or something, because the game was unplayable for 30 plus hours, unplanned. So yeah, but so to quote part of the statement, so Kazunori said, "I would like to apologize for the frustration and confusion caused last week with our patch updates, which resulted in not only a server outage, but also adjustments to the in-game economy, which were made without a clear explanation to our community." And that's actually what I think is one of the bigger or larger debated things, was the changes to the way that credits and stuff worked in the game, and rewards and stuff. So the fact that they acknowledged not just that they fucked up on a technical side, but also that they fucked up on explaining what was going on to the community, and the reasons for the changes. That acknowledgement I thought was nice. That's what I wanted to hear. I also wanted in-game currency, because I'm an entitled gamer, and lo and behold, once I get back in Gran Turismo 7, I'm going to have 1 million credits waiting for me. And anybody else who is affected has until April 25th. If you log in, you will receive 1 million in-game credits. So that's pretty cool.
You
So
will
that's
have
nice.
also had to have logged in before that post was
Yeah.
made. So
Yeah.
anyone like just, I'm gonna buy Gran Turismo 7 and get free money, it's not gonna work. Sorry.
Well, also that would be a pretty stupid thing. Like,
Very much so. But I mean, a lot of games do that. They're like, hey, we fucked up. Here's free credits to everyone just because it's easy. Like, why not
yeah.
just make it? It's harder to limit than it is to just give it away.
But yeah, so if you were affected by the outage, you can log in and you'll have 1 million credits. But one thing that I appreciate about the statement is they go into detail about future updates, not just like coming very soon, but also like a little bit further out into the future. So I'm just going to go over some of them. It is kind of a lot. But in early April, they're updating Gran Turismo 7 to have increased rewards with events in the latter half of the world circuits, by approximately 100%. So 100% more money, to counter the lower rewards for earlier events that they did. Also, there's going to be higher rewards for completing the circuit experience, which is basically like time trials for portions of the tracks, increased rewards for online races. They're adding like 1 hour endurance races. They're adding an increase to the amount of credits that you can have in game in your wallet, basically, and increasing the quantity of used and legend cars that are on offer at any given time. And then throughout the rest of April, they're going to have a series of other updates that are going to add new cars, new course layouts, and other like little smaller fixes. And then without a specific date, beyond April, they're going to add some larger features, including more World Circuit events, additional endurance races and missions, including 24-hour races. I don't know what that means. Does that mean a 24-hour long race, or a big race that happens like once a day? I don't
Yeah,
really know what that
when I
means.
read that too, I didn't know how to I don't know if it was a grammatical thing or if it was just the way I was reading it, but I imagine it's like a either an event or there's going to be whether or maybe there's a and it's only for 24 hours or they're going to have 24 total hour long different races.
Yeah,
I doubt we're going to see a
unclear.
24-hour long
Well, I don't know.
thing where people play for a straight 24 hours.
There's a track in there that's like it's like 30 or 40 minutes to do one lap on I mean if you drive like I do at least. Uh for it's like the Nürburgring, which is like a famous really long track. Anyways, um they're also adding the ability to sell used cars, which is pretty cool. That's been in previous Gran Turismos, but now there's this. So it'll kind of have an in-game market, which will be nice. So they've laid all this out. They've explained some of the reasons for their changes, specifically increasing the amount of in-game currency it takes to purchase certain cars in the game to reflect the real-world prices, but also decreasing the rewards for certain things. And they seem to be countering that with new missions, increased rewards, the ability to trade cars, and things like that. So my question is this enough? And does this solve the problem? Uh, and I know you said that you don't really play Gran Turismo, but how do you feel about this, Alex?
I mean,
From the outside looking in.
the outside looking in, from what I'm hearing, this resolves the issue. Like, or at least it is enough. It's a good forgiveness. One, again, you got the credits, 1 million credits. That's a lot, and you could buy a bunch of cheap, smaller cars in the game, or if you want to just ball out and get one super luxury car in there, you can. So you've got the flexibility there. You also have the blatant. Like, it's an apology. My biggest thing from this, reading it last week, was it just seemed like a big fu. There was like no explanation, and nor did he offer to give one when
Yeah.
explaining as to what happened. It was just like, "Hey, we're doing this. We broke this, and then by the way, we're actually going to like just revamp this. Just understand we're like let us know how we're messing up, but just understand we're going to take care of this." And it's like, no, because for 48 hours you weren't taking care of it, but now all of a sudden I
Yeah.
just need to trust you because you told me to. But at the same time, you're telling me to tell you when you mess up. Okay, here, you messed up. So I think that's fine. Is this a solution? That's a hard question to answer right now, right? Because we have a roadmap of what we would like to see, but we don't know if there's going to be changes, any hiccups. We don't have an exact timetable. We don't have dates, and then on top of it, we may say those metrics and those numbers. That sounds great on paper, right? But we won't know exactly how tedious or lack thereof it will be until it actually hits. Um, this is
Yeah.
more for you, right? How do you feel? Do you feel like it's enough? Do you accept the apology?
I suppose I accept the apology. I don't really care much for apologies in general. Um,
Okay.
I mean I appreciate apologies, but I think actions speak louder than words.
Hmm.
And I get the impression that the 1 million credits wasn't going to happen unless there was the backlash. Um, because otherwise, the original statement I feel like would have been the one that would say, "Hey, sorry, here's 1 million credits." But because there was such a visceral and loud response to the initial update, I think that's kind of why they're doing it.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I don't feel strongly one way or another about the apology itself. I do like the 1 million credits. I did specifically want credits in the game because I wasn't able to play it when I wanted to play it,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I would have probably earned about 1 million credits during that play session too. So there's that. Um, Now the updates and stuff, all of this, I genuinely believe they were planning on doing all of these things. He sort of
Yeah.
hinted at doing that in the first update, even though he did it in kind of a passive aggressive way. Um, Also, this is very much so in line with previous updates for Gran Turismo Sport. Uh, and the ability to sell used cars has been in previous Gran Turismo games. So all of that checks out. It lines up All of these things are things that I expect anyways, like the new cars, new updates, the updates to prices, more missions and events and all of these things. That all makes sense. Um, so that's good. As far as like the gameplay and balancing and all of that, everyone's concerns about the game itself seem to be addressed, and the future looks bright for the most perfect racing simulator out there, from a gameplay perspective. However, I still have some concerns about the online requirement because, I mean, this happened the first major update for the game, and the game
Mhm.
was unexpectedly essentially shut down and unplayable for 30 plus hours. Maybe this was just a fluke. Maybe this was just a one time thing. But is this something that's going to happen now? Like, is this something that I should be afraid of any time that there's an update for the game? Am I going to be like, oh well, I have to update this game, but am I not going to be able to play Gran Turismo for another day or two? Like that's kind of shitty. Like
I
I
think in that case, if there is an outage of that scale, there will be more of a heads up, if at all. Like if there's going to be another outage at all, there will be a heads up. I don't think just because they're aware, now it's.
well, I mean, so usually whenever there was an update for Gran Turismo Sport, they
Mhm.
had pretty regular updates, and usually it would go offline for like an hour or two. Sometimes it would be like 6 hours, 8 hours, but it was never like a ridiculously long amount of time. And yeah, they would give a heads up. They would say, we're going to be offline during these times because that's when they're updating the game. Um,
Mhm.
but for it to be completely shut down in the way that it was before, like they even mentioned that it was something that they didn't see during any of their testing. It was completely out of the blue. It surprised them, and they shut down the game because of a security um, concern. They were afraid that it like something was compromised, and so they shut it down. And if that happened once during the first one, I'm wondering like this gives no reassurance that that's not going to happen again. The
Well, I
update
think
didn't even mention that.
I think the practice. I think it might be implied. Hey, we messed up. We didn't see this. If they are a good developer, like that's the only way you can put it. If they're a good developer, they're going to be more alert and more aware of situations like this happening and focusing on ways to prevent it from happening again. If it does happen again, at that point, Polyphony is their credibility as a long-standing developer for PlayStation is gone. It's out the window. It's lost. Period. So, I mean, 25 years of Gran Turismo doesn't mean shit if a situation like this happens again, because that
That is
just
actually
shows a level of care that they don't have. So
that is kind
that
of an
that's how I
interesting
feel about
point.
it.
It's also it's interesting to think of how one mistake can fuck up our view of a an entire studio. Um, like
I
I have a
think it's
great deal.
I think it's a scale of the mistake. One a tiny mistake is one thing, but this was a big fucking mistake. Like and with even if it was something that happened, it's the timing and the scale. It happened not even a month after launch of the game,
Mhm,
after critics have already raved and reviewed this game and said it was perfect, and more often than not, people have bought this game off the shelves because of those critiques and the positive feedback the game has gotten, and then gotten this game and could not have played it for about 2 days. That like if this happened 3 years down the line, that's a different story, right? Like, oh, okay, the game's out. It had a mishap 3 years after launch. No one's talking about it at that point, right? Except the people actually
mhm.
playing the game. And it's like 3 years later, like, oh shit, I wonder what happened. Something must have gone wrong. This close to just coming out the gate, that's a different story. It's a totally different conversation. That's like, um, I mean, that's if Grand Theft Auto had launched back in 2013 or not even before then. When did that? I don't know. Was that 2013 when it came out on PS3 and 360?
Yeah, 2013
Yeah,
was GTA 5.
2013. If that game launched and it was, it got the scale of, everyone loved it, great, 10s out of 10s, and then 2 weeks after launch, the whole fucking thing, campaign, online multiplayer, the whole shebang just didn't run. That game, granted, Gran Turismo is a bit of a weird one right now with the fact that it's been almost 15 years and it's still pumping out money. That game would not be as successful as it was when it first came out. No way, because people
Well,
would have been pissed. It's
that's
like,
actually it's interesting that you bring up Grand Theft Auto specifically, because here recently we had an instance where Rockstar released the Grand Theft Auto trilogy, and it was a broken disaster of a
mhm.
game. Like, it was disgusting how fucked up it was. Like, to the point where it performed worse than the original games, and this was like the original trilogy. Like
Well,
on
3 Vice City and San
Yeah,
Andreas.
the original 3D trilogy, I guess, on PS2, and the games were performing worse in the
Mhm.
alleged definitive editions. And it was still the best-selling game that week. They still sold multi-millions of copies. People still played it. People on podcasts, like very respected podcasts, were even talking about how much fun they're having with the game, and kind of excusing a lot of these issues. But that game was a mess. And then also at the same time, like recently, CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk, we see that, and now they recently teased the new Witcher game, and people seem to be kind of like, did we forget about what happened with Cyberpunk, where it was
I
basically an entire year of garbage,
and that's the
um,
thing. So that how
and
much
then
of something like that affecting, like, that's a perfect example, Cyberpunk. That game came out a fucking mess, and it went on, uh, close to a year later. That game has been on sale at least 3 times for $10 at Best Buy. And that was after it was confirmed the next gen version would be coming as a free update to those who bought the game. Like,
yeah, but
that game,
I
that's fucked up.
so that is fucked up. But I do think it's interesting. Like, I don't think what happened with Polyphony Digital and Gran Turismo 7 is anywhere near as disgusting, in my opinion, as what happened with um
GTA.
uh no, the CD Project Red and Cyberpunk. And
Oh, no
to a
question. Yeah.
larger extent, me personally, I think, well, maybe not to a larger extent, but Rockstar with the Grand Theft Auto trilogy. Um, and I'm particularly upset about the Rockstar one because there's really no excuse. Like, Rockstar has a ridiculous amount of money, um,
And the games were
ridiculous amount of
fine
money.
10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and they literally, like, they could have just not released the trilogy for another year or two, and they would have been fine. They chose to release it in the state that it was, like, and really bothersome. But as far as like the legacy of Gran Turismo, I don't think this necessarily stains it. I think that the only thing that potentially could is, yeah, if it is a continued issue. If during the next update the game goes offline because of a security issue, because of the online only requirement. Like, the online only requirement is something that people complain about a lot, but honestly, not a lot of people who play Gran Turismo 7 are complaining about it. It's a lot of people who are kind of outside of it saying, "Oh, well, this is DRM," which, yeah, online requirements, that is a form of DRM, like digital rights management. But that's not why they're doing it for Gran Turismo. They're doing it because they want to counter hackers and keep the game fair and competitive without without allowing people to game the system, because it's such a very specific and particular respected online community within the game. So like, that makes sense, but it's just scary to me that I spent $70 on a game that I might just not be able to play. Um, when I want to play it. And I think if you spend money on something and you want to play it, you should be able to play it. But
True enough. True words never spoken. Haven't been spoken. Whatever that phrase is. Who gives a shit? Anyway, moving right along.